Hello and welcome to another walkthrough for Django for everybody. This walkthrough is pretty much the setup. It's both the first assignment in the class and the first thing you would do to get your Django application working on PythonAnywhere. PythonAnywhere, of course, is a hosted environment and you do all your work in PythonAnywhere. And so with this, I'm starting with a brand new fresh account that I just created and going to walk through this thing. Now, importantly, you should always check the latest install documentation because as time passes, we use later and later versions of Python and later versions of Django. And so while this video may or may not match what the actual instructions are, so you need to be both looking at the instructions and the video, and in a sense, if there's a conflict between the instructions and the video that I'm doing right now, you should go with the instructions. So here we go. So the first thing we're going to do is start a bash shell. And so we're going to go into consoles and start a bash shell. They call them consoles. It takes a bit for this to start up. This is a Linux environment and we are using the bash shell. And so the first thing we've got to do is choose the version of Python that we're going to use, and we're going to do this with a virtual environment. And so this virtual environment, I'm going to name it, and I'm going to choose an initial Python version. And so away we go. So we're going to run this. Now this can take a little while, especially when you're using a free account. So don't stop. You have to wait until you get the $ prompt back. And so you should basically be patient. Okay, so that took about a minute, about 50 seconds. You can see that that one took 50 seconds. So I've edited it to make it a little bit shorter, but that's how long it takes. The next one tends to take even a little bit longer. We're going to use the Python install process. You'll notice that it's also activated this Django 4. So we had to do that first, and we have to be in Django 4. And then this pip command actually downloads and installs the Django library into our virtual environment. And again, this takes a little time. So that just finished, and it took about from 54 to 02. So it took 8 minutes for that to finish. So that takes a while. So back to the instructions. I don't have to say work on Django 4 because whenever you see Django 4 there, you're already in the virtual environment. So I'm going to do Python version. And I'll make sure that I have version 3.9. Now see, these things are fast. I think we were writing a lot of disk space. Check the version of Django 4.2. Of course, you know, we maybe have moved to a new version of Python or a new version of Django by the time you're watching this. So again, always come back and look at the instructions. Now, you have to type this command work on Django 4 all the time, or we can make it so that every time you start a new console, we're going to make this happen. So let's do that. So I like to use a lot of tabs. So I'm going to go into the Files tab and open this in a new tab, right? So go to Files. So now I have my files here, and this is my home directory. Like virtual environments, that's where I put that Django. But the file I'm going to edit right now is the bashrc file. And this is the startup file when you start a new shell. And I'm going to copy these two lines, auto switch into the Django 4. One's a comment, and I'm going to put them here. I will even put like echo hi Chuck in this to show kind of where this thing starts up. And then I'm just going to save it. And I'm going to go back into my home directory. And this means if I go into a console and open a link in a new tab, and I start a new bash console, you will see that it starts it up, but then runs the commands from that .bashrc. This is just kind of a Linux bash thing. Bash stands for the born again shell. And you see it says, hi Chuck. That means it was running, it actually ran it twice. So I'll take that out later, but that makes it so that like this shell that I'm in now is already in Django 4. but that basically means that was the code that was running. It's an echo that came out right after the print statement for bash shell. But I'm in my virtual environment, and that students make all kinds of mistakes all the time where they forget to go into the virtual environment, and that's the first thing in like office hours or help or talking to the course staff. They're in the wrong virtual environment. So if you just put it in this .bashrc, according to the instructions, life is a lot simpler. So we are sitting here in the Django, we're in our Django virtual environment, and we've got all the software installed. So now we're going to install some sample code. And this is going to do some more work, and there's another thing that's going to take a little while. That cd tilde, you'll see I do that a lot. That goes into your home directory. And now I'm going to download from GitHub a bunch of sample code. And this is the sample code that's used in the, it's the sample code that's used in the course, but it also is going to give you a copy for your own self to go look at and copy from. You can like open these files up and copy stuff into your own files. And so if we, let me go ahead and close this. I'm going to type exit to close this console. And now the console's closed. I'll close the window. So if I go into consoles, you see I've only got one. That's this console right here. But if I go back into files, you see this DJ Free Samples folder. And I am now filling up this DJ Free Samples folder with all the data from the DJ Free Samples repository in GitHub. And again, now you can go edit those files. It's almost done. Okay, so now I could go in here and look into DJ Free Samples. So you see all these samples. There's the cats sample and all the codes here. And you'll see that these are quite a bit of, things. And there's the models file. I mean, we're getting way ahead of it. So all this DJ Free Samples, I just checked that out. And so that finished the checkout. Now I'm going to go back here and make sure /DJ Free Samples is like double making sure to make sure PWD where I'm at. And so you'll see that I'm in this working directory of home csev DJ Free Samples, home csev DJ Free Samples. So you kind of got to know when you're working in your shell and you're working in the files, which files are where. And you can always type PWD, print working directory in a shell, to figure out where you're at, and then you could navigate to that same place, sort of working through these folders here. But back to our instructions. Now we're going to do another thing that takes potentially a long time. So we're going to start at 7 minutes after, and we're going to install. Now what this is doing is pulling in a whole bunch of library code that you're going to require throughout this whole semester. Now my thing is running a little faster now, so that's nice. We'll see. This might take a little bit while because now it's downloaded. It's going to write it all to disk. Okay, so that finished. Let's just see how long it took. 1907. It took about 3 minutes for me. Okay, so back to our instructions. Just be patient. And then we're going to run Python Manage PyCheck, and you're going to use Python Manage PyCheck a lot in this course. It's a way to basically take a Django application and sort of preload it all into memory and see if there's like syntax errors, etc. Now you didn't write this code. This is my sample code. If this fails at this point, given all those other commands that haven't worked, that's bad because this is code I wrote. But we're basically verifying kind of that all Django and Python and all the dependencies are properly installed. And so that's good. So we kind of now know that we've done, this is most of the long running stuff is now done. So we don't have to, things will go a lot faster. So sometimes if you don't have your virtual environment set up right, I don't know if I can fake it right now, Python 2. I don't know if I can run Python 2 or not. There's no Python 2. Oh, I can do Python. Let's see if I can do Python 2. If I check. So if I mistakenly run Python 2, please don't do this. If I mistakenly run Python 2, it will get a syntax error. So, but the Python I'm running right now is Python 3. And so if you see a syntax error, it probably means you're running the wrong version of Python. And that's because this manage.py file. Now here's the thing that will confuse you, is if you go into DJ Free Samples and then you decide that you're going to open up the manage.py to read it because you figure, oh, there's a syntax error. Look at this. It says there's a syntax error. The problem is this text editor is seeing Python 2 syntax, and that's a Python 2 syntax error, not a Python 3 syntax error. So don't make that mistake, and that's why I put these explicit instructions. If you see a syntax error, don't freak out, and do not edit manage.py. Do not, not now, not anywhere else in this class. Okay, so now we're going to just test our ability to create a database. We're going to run the make migrations command. And this is you'll learn more about this much later. This is basically reading all the models.py in the samples, and then it is going to, the migrate is going to actually create a database. And again, you're not really going to use this database much, but it is a way to make sure by using my code to verify that all of your installation is working well and your virtual environment's in good place. And so that's good shape. And so that's why I basically do that. We're probably not going to run this code, but this will just really test to make sure that the overall setup works well. And so that's not really that big of a deal. So now what we're going to do is we've really got the installation right. We're in the Django 4 and we've installed a whole bunch of stuff. And so now let's go into our home directory, cd tilde. So to go into our home directory, and you only have to do this once. We're going to make a directory called Django projects, make dir Django projects. So now if I look in here, you're going to see that I have a new folder called Django projects. Then I'm going to go into that Django projects and start and then I'm going to create my site. So what this is doing is this is starting an empty Django application, my site. So now I can go into Django projects and see my site. You should be in your home directory, Django projects, my site. If you are in your home directory and you see a my site here, that's bad. You're not supposed to have done that. That means that somehow you sort of got it confused and you ran this command twice or something. But now we're going to start editing this file. And so you're going to have to figure out, like, these folders that I give you, you're going to have to go find them. So Django projects, my site, and you got to go in twice because that's where the settings file is. Now the thing is, the settings file is only one place. So if you find the settings file, you're good. So we're going to go into settings, and it tells you on or about line 28, you got to add this little asterisk. Otherwise, it will not accept connections from around the world. They're very conservative when they first set your project up. So now we are going to save this file. Okay, so that's the first thing that you've got to do. Eventually, if you were running this on your local computer, you do this thing called run server, which would start this up, but we're not going to do that. So we are going to go into the web tab, and I'm going to again start this up in a new tab. So I still have my console, I still have my file editing, and now I have this web tab. And so now we're going to set things up. So I'm going to add a new web app. And I'm using the free account, and I'm going to say manual configuration here, and I'm going to use Python 3.9 because in the beginning we started with Python 3.9. Okay, so you do want to match that. So we're going to say we're going to make a web app, Python 3.9. So it's setting it all up. So here we are. Okay, and this is the domain name of my page. And so now we continue in our instructions, and it's telling us, the instructions say how to do this. So let's go back, running check, building application, starting it. Okay, so then you got to go down to see here where your application is. Okay, so we're going to make our application. This is going to be /home, I can't type, /csev, which is my account, sev, /Django _projects, /my site. Now I'm going to highlight this because I'm going to use it twice. And I'm going to set the working directory to the exact same thing. Okay, so that should work. And so then the virtual environment is going to be, I'll just copy this. The virtual environment has got to be that virtual environment that we just created, except it's not Dr. Chuck. This is the account here is CSEV. So now I have a virtual environment. Now it might complain like if you got the version wrong or whatever, but right now I'm getting no errors, and so that's a good sign. Now the other thing we've got to do, and this is just a little bit weird, and you're only going to have to do this once, is this WSGI configuration file. I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to use Control A or Command A and delete the whole thing. And then I'm going to take this bit of code right here, and I'm going to put it in this WSGI file and then save it. And then I'm going to hit back, and I'm back here. So I've edited this WSGI file. And again, I'm just carefully following away, right? Away you go. And now it should work. I mean, we'll see if I did it right. So I'm going to hit this reload button. So what this is this is basically reading all these files that are sitting in this folder that we put in and starting Django up, and then hopefully connecting all the requests that are going to come in from the outside world into this csev.pythonanywhere.com. So let's take a look. Oh, and it worked, and it worked successfully. So that's good. Now, you know, there's all kind of things that might happen badly, and let's just start by making a mistake. Okay, I'm going to take this settings file, and I'm going to put in here. I'm going to put in let's make a mistake. This is a Python file, and I am. This is not good syntax. Allowed host equals is a list. That debug equals true. That's an assignment statement. So let's just put like bad code in here. So then what would happen is I would say save, and then I would come and I would reload csev.pythonanywhere.com. And now it's reading all those files again, including that settings.py file. And then I would go here and I would hit refresh, and it would say something went wrong. And this is really, really scary. But the way to best debug these is to go in here, Django Projects My Site, into the Django Projects folder, and then you got to be in the folder that has that manage.py, and then you say Python manage.py check. I told you before that what this does is preloads everything and does a whole bunch of checking. And so this basically is a traceback, and it's got a bunch of stuff in it, but the one that matters is here. This is my code. The rest of these things are Python libraries, etc. And it's like, oh, let's make a mistake. And it's on line 30 of settings.py. So you go find settings.py. Let's make a mistake. Look, oh, there's a syntax error. So I'll take this back out, and then I will save it. And away we go. And then after I've saved it, I've got to go back and I've got to reload it again. Wait until this little spinny thing has finished. And then refresh this, and now my application is working. That error we got that something went wrong is called a 500 error, which means that the server, PythonAnywhere, received a request, but the code to respond to it's not working right. So away we go. So I believe at this point we are in pretty good shape. Oh, then we're going to add our polls application. So now we're going to go back to our console. And I'm going to say cd this, which is, oops, cd, paste, cd. I got to be in Django Projects My Site, and now I'm going to start an application. Python manage py start app, and you got to be in the right folder for this to work. And so this is going to create another folder. So if I go take a look at my Django Projects folder in My Site, you will see that now this polls folder is currently there. Okay, so let's continue. That's right. And then you're supposed to follow the steps in the Django tutorial. But in general, the one thing that you get wrong is if you then go down, you do all this stuff. We created a start app. The one place where this thing will take you awry is when it says run server. Whenever these tutorials tell you run server, you got to come back to these instructions to say, oh, instead do a Python manage py check in your console. That basically makes sure that everything's kind of syntactically correct. And then go back to your web app and do a reload. And that's the same as a run server. So run Python manage py check and then do the reload. And that's the same as whatever it's telling you to do when it's telling you in a Django project. This is a Django project, right? When it's telling you to do that, don't do run server. Do Python manage py check and then go and test your things. Okay? So I think that kind of gets us to the point where you can go through those things. I've got some possible errors. Don't have two my sites. If you see a second one, get rid of it and make sure your my site is inside of Django projects. And so it tells a bunch of things, etc., etc., etc. So I hope this has been helpful to you. See you online. Cheers.